The basis of my presentation is historical and archaeological, and I would like to talk about an interesting topic, interesting about an interesting monument for Armenia as well as worldwide. It's Argishtikhinili. Many of the monuments are not possible to excavate in their entirety. Argishtikhinili is an exception. And by the way, I would say this applies to the western and eastern fortresses equally. Argishtikhinili fortress was excavated in its entirety. It is only partially studied, and not only the fortress but also the tomb field. So for the last several years we're studying the tombs. The east side of Argishtikhinili is located in Armavir province of the Republic of Armenia, at a distance of 9 to 10 kilometers to the south from the administrative center. The western fortress of Argishtikhinili town, established by the King Argishti in 776 before Christ, is located within the territory of Nur Armavir village. The fortress is built on the hill called nowadays Saint David. 6 before Christ is located within the territory of Nur Armavir village. The fortress is built on the hill called nowadays Saint David. And the second eastern fortress of the Argishtikhinili town is situated on the hill named Armavir. So, on the left side you have Argishtikhinili, on the right side you see the Armavir hill and the city districts between them. Armavir later on became the residence of Yervanduni kings. Between these two fortresses and their vicinity, the large town of Argishtikhinili was located with its 5 water canals originating from Morax River, palaces, temple complexes, and town quarters. Moreover, the eastern fortress had another name, the town of Haldi, and a semi-ruined temple, Susi, stands on the top of the hill, which is dedicated to the country's supreme deity, Haldi. You see that temple on your screens. 27 Urartian inscriptions as well as Elamite tablets and ancient Greek rock inscriptions were found in the territory of Argishtikhinili and neighboring settlements. You see Elamite inscriptions and the Greek
Հելլենիստական ժամանակաշրջանում Վաղարշակ արքան իր
rock
նախին
inscriptions. During the Hellenistic period, the king Vagarshak built a shrine in Armavir dedicated to his ancestors, the sun and the moon, where later on the king Artaxerxes I placed the statues of Apollo, Artemis, and Heracles, which he brought from Asia Minor. After the death of King Artaxerxes, the Vahuni priests took the statue of Heracles, whom they considered their ancestor, Vahagn. The shrine on Mount Karke, where Astrik and Anahit were worshipped together with Vahagn. Earlier, a plane tree forest was planted near Armavir, and the priests used to make divinations
Հին Հունաստանում սովորաբար
thanks
պահում
to the
էին արևելին
resulting,
եւ իր քրոջ
thanks to
Արտեմիսին,
rustling of their lips,
այսինքն նույն Արեգակին
they
Ուլուսին
were
շուրջ։
devoted to Apollo
Այդ
and his sister
միջնադարահայտում
Artemis,
Արմավիր քաղաք
to
դարձրել
the
էր
same sun and
մարտահրավեր
moon. In the
երկրորդ
early
Սպարտա
medieval
հեղափոխության
period, the
ժամանակ։
city of Armavir
Իր
became a
զարգացած
fortress of secondary
միջնադարում
importance, and later
Արմավիրը
on
գյուղի էր
it
վերածվել։
was already transformed into a
Հոգևոր
small village.
զբաղմունքային
In
առումով,
spiritual and
սակայն Արմավիրը
cultic sense,
մնացել էր որպես
however,
մեծ
Armavir
քաղաք։
remained
Այս բլրի
an
վրա
important
կազմված խաչը եւ մատուրը ուխտատեղի են եւ 19-րդ
holy
դարում։
place.
Ուխտի
The cross
օրերը
and the chapel
որոշվածել
on
են
the hill were
Լազարի
places of
երկրորդ
pilgrimage in the 19th
գարնանին,
century. The days for
գարնանը,
pilgrimage were on the second
նույն
Sunday of the
փաստի
Easter in spring, and the
տոնը
feast of the discovery of the Holy Cross was in autumn.
ամրոցի գագաթին
The Saint Cross Chapel on the top of the hill
36 թվականին մատուրի նկարը տեսնում եք, կար մատուր, որը
So you see the picture of the chapel. It was destroyed in 1936. The chapel was built in front of the Urartian Susi temple. St. David's pilgrimage day was also on the second day of Easter. There is also a day of commemoration of Saint David, which is celebrated in the last week of December. As I said, the feast of the discovery of the Holy Cross was in autumn. So the chapel is devoted to the Saint David. There is also the day of remembrance or commemoration day for the for Saint David the prophet and Saint James the apostle, and it is being celebrated in December. By the way, the chapel of Saint David is not dedicated to David Dvinetsi, as can be suggested, but to the king prophet David. So you see, if you go around, if you turn the mouth of the child on the chapel, the door will open. And there is also a tombstone, which is on the right side, which is called Saint Varvara's stone. So according to the beliefs, she was the sister of David. So it is also understood if you actually put the stone against the wall, if it doesn't fall, then your dreams will come true. These traditions or these beliefs have also their opponents. For example, a girl who was born in Nor Armavir visited this chapel and tells that she had a dream, and in her dream, a girl with scratched face approached her and asked her not to scratch her face again. It is obvious association with the stones which were scratched against the walls of the chapel. Systemic excavations on the St. David's Hill began in 1962 under the leadership of Martyrs and later on Torosian. During excavations, it was revealed that the site is multi-layered. The territory of the hill was inhabited from the early Bronze Age. Then they left this place because the soil was not barren anymore, was barren and no longer was producing harvest. The Kurarak settlement that was formed by here was abundant in the 3rd millennia BC. Later in the 12th centuries BC, a new settlement was established here, which however was destroyed by the Urartians in the 8th century BC. The Urartians built the western fortress of the town of Argishtikhinili at the same place. Argishtikhinili, as well as Bayani, were invaded and burned in the 6th century BC. The year is uncertain, but the month was August, as the barns were full and the harvest was collected. In the early Armenian period, the territory of the abundant forest was used for burials.
կյանքը կրկին աշխուժանում է
The life
եւ
revived again on the St. David's Hill in the 9th century
Լուսախտում
and prospered in 12th, 13th centuries, when a rich village existed here.
հարուստ մի
The
գյուղերում
well-built
գտնվել են դրամներ,
dwellings,
արժեք
numerous Byzantine and Eldegus coins, high quality ceramics, and colorful glass bracelets unearthed here indicate the wildlife of the medieval village. The village was abundant during the Mongol invasions.
գտնվում է
The necropolis of the western fortress of Argishtikhinili is located mainly within the territory of Nor Armanvir village, beneath the houses and gardens, and it is actually endangered. To study this necropolis in 2012, the expedition of Nor Armavir of the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography was formed.
այս տարիների ընթացքում
During these years, the
եւ
expedition actually found and excavated 33 tombs,
եւ 7
out of which 17 Pithos burials among recorded and excavated ones.
Սա թաղման մի ձև է,
This is a type of burial which existed before, which was not actually characteristic to the population of this area before the Urartian invasion. We do not have any evidence of this in the late Bronze or Iron period, and we basically found such
կարող էին ի հայտ գալ տարածաշրջանում
graves only after the Urartian period.
Սա կարող էր կրոնական մի նոր
The burials in Pito and sarcophagi could occur for two reasons. With the settlers in the region who were the majority in Argishtikhinili, this could be also a result of formation of a religious sect. The sectarians avoided polluting the land, water, air, and fire with corpses like in Zoroastrians.
երկի միասնությունն ապահովելու նպատակով Արգիշտի առաջին եւ
And
Սարգսի արքաները մեր թվականությունից առաջ 8-րդ դարում
it is noteworthy that the first Pito's burial in our valley was discovered and studied in 1957 in Erebonides.
Խոսքը երկրով 1 սեպտեմբեր
Suggests that the Pito's burials in the region that appeared in the 18th century BC then survived until the nearly medieval period as the result of ethnic policy adopted by the kings, one kingdom Argishti I and Arduri II, and also to ensure the unity of the country. This king sought to create economy regulated and controlled by the state. This refers to the new towns with the extent land areas and state workshops and water canals, as well as properties, barns, pasture lands, cattle, fields, and gardens dedicated to gold haldi, which were spread throughout the country. Ethnical factors also played a great role in strengthening the unity of country. This refers to the movements of population from various regions to the country that helped in organization of the above-mentioned economies, ensured the security of the frontiers of the country. The migrants were interested in strength of the central power when they appeared in the foreign environment and contributed to integration of various ethnical groups. These migrants were obliged to serve in the army to pay tribute. Argishti I alone relegated around 280,000 people, were Arduri II 197,000 people. In this regard, it is also noteworthy that according to the annals of Argishti I, he relocated 2,539 young men, 8,698 men, and 18,047 women during his invasion of the lands of Hatay and Tsupa a year before the establishment of Erebuni fortress. As it is mentioned in the second column of the chronicle, 6,600 warriors were resettled to Erebuni from Hatay and Tsupa lands. According to academic Melekashvili, the 6,600 warriors were taken out of the 8,698 men. So these warriors were resettled to Erebuni with their families, along with the Armenian warriors. Thus, it can be suggested that the whole population relocated during the invasion was settled in the region, about 29,000 people. According to his opinion, Argishti dedicated to Susi temple in Erebuni to Ivarsha, a god worshipped by these people. He also suggests that Ivarsha corresponds to Imarsha deity, known from the Luvian sources, and this cult was introduced to Erebuni by these migrants from Hatay and Tsupa land. I am trying to connect also Ivarsha to Armenian King Ara. On the other hand, but besides Evarja, which was introduced as a deity from Luvanian lands, we also find Amarutu deity, which could be Marduk from Babylon, or could be Shantash, again from Luvian pantheon. So there are some facts, such as the burial rites and the presence of those shrines, which are connected to the migration and resettlement of these people, and it led to the conclusion that those who were buried in this necropolis are people who were resettled from the Luvian lands. On the other hand, it is also noteworthy that those beliefs which were not characteristic for one kingdom were tolerated by Urartians, by the government, so to speak. They tolerated their existence, but at the same time, the government was trying to also oppose this movement. In Argishtikhinili, I mean both hills, there were some worship objects built with greater density. Haldi, Aurabaini, Teishebaini, and Verashivini deities. Aurabaini is one of the oldest known in the Armenian plain. At the same times, there were special decrees and also chronicles from the king with instructions about the sacrifices that should have been done annually in Armavir and should have been attended by all people. And there are also some priests remembered who should have actually performed those sacrifices, and some segments of the population or important groups of the population should have attended those rituals. All those events we would call a kind of ideological struggle against the religious beliefs of the resettled migrants, but they were only partially successful because in the 6th century we had also some sarcophagus burials, but I actually skipped them because of the time. We nevertheless have some peat burials which were not characteristic to the necropolis of Argishtikhinili. To some extent, the peat burial is replaced by the sarcophagus burial. So the victory was not full, because if we consider that this ritual of burial was to some extent related to religion, if we talk about Ararat Valley in Armenia, this type of burial was still present until the early medieval centuries, before Armenia accepted Christianity. And one more sentence. This link with the Zoroastrianism gives me some courage to say that at the end of the 8th century, at the upper part of the valley, the Zoroastrian religion was well known and similar to Zoroastrian ideology. Religion similar to the Zoroastrian religion was present there with some influence over the inhabitants of that area. Thank you very much.